I'm Gesine Bullock-Prado. I live in beautiful Vermont, and I am a baker. Baking can, for some people, seem really intimidating because it's very precise, because there's a lot of stuff going on that they can control. So, like in bread, it's doing all this rising outside of you. You're not making that happen, and you're like, ooh, how do I know it's gonna work? I think one of the things that I had to learn as a baker is patience. That when you decide to bake, you say, this is my time, this is for me, and I'm gonna be patient with myself and with the dough and allow myself to really enjoy the experience, because you know you're gonna enjoy it so much more when it comes out of the oven and it's perfect. Welcome to my kitchen. Today we're going to be making honey buns. It's one of my favorite breads in the whole wide world. And there's some really cool techniques to making this to make it super, super, super light, fluffy, and tender. And the first thing special that we're going to do is we're going to make something called a tangzhong, which is like this cool paste. We're heating up the flour, some water, some milk, and then we're going to gelatinize those starches so it creates this really cool tenderness in the bread. So the first thing I have to do is weigh my flour. I'm going to take my pot, put it on my scale, and 1 cup of flour is 120 grams. And this is a half a cup of flour that I'm putting in, so 60 grams, math. So to that 60 grams of flour, I'm going to add 1/2 cup of whole milk and a 1/2 cup of water. It doesn't matter the temperature at this point because we're going to be heating them up together. That goes all together. And then back on the heating element. Now before I turn on the heat, I make sure that I whisk everything together. I'm thinking medium heat is best for this. You don't want it to go too quickly. And you whisk constantly. If you don't whisk constantly, the possibility of it scalding and burning that milk is pretty high. And then once you can feel that the thickening has started to happen, it almost looks like it starts pilling at first, like it's lumpy, which is not the most attractive thing. But just continue whisking, get really vigorous, and then it'll smooth out. Ooh, it's getting foamy, always a good sign. The other thing I love about this recipe is that you can make just traditional rolls. I like to form the dough so that it looks like a bunny, honey bunny, get it? But then you can make cinnamon rolls, you can make babka, you can make so many different things. You can even make donuts. Crazy. So it's starting to thicken right in the middle. So make sure you take some time to get to the sides of the pot and make it all thick and glorious. Now next, we're going to have to let this cool. You don't want to continue baking with it this hot. So I'm going to transfer it to the pot and let it come to room temperature. So now, perfectly room temperature. So to that, I'm going to add some other very special ingredients. The milk I have here is lukewarm. So another 1/2 cup, and to that I'm going to add a whole egg, a large egg. I always use large eggs, room temperature, but I'm not going to add it directly to the bowl. I'm going to add it to the milk and whisk it so that I break up the egg a bit. Your dough will be so much better if you just take the time to do little steps. To that, I'm going to add honey. And it's 3 tablespoons or 63 grams. Next, I'm going to add salt. And then I'm going to add the yeast to my flour. And the really important thing is that you use the right yeast for the right product. The right yeast is always platinum yeast from Red Star. And one of the things that I always tell students is instant yeast, it's incredibly easy to use, but this particular yeast is always consistent. Everything is incredibly consistent. The rise is consistent, especially when you're making a dough like this. And I'm adding 3.5 cups of flour and the yeast. To that, I'm going to add 2 ounces of soft, unsalted butter. But I'm not going to add it until I have a little strength in my dough. I want to work the dough to some degree so that I get some gluten developed before I add more fat. If I add the fat too soon, it's going to coat too much of that flour with fat and making that gluten unavailable to create more strength. We need a good rise. So we do need a little muscle in there. So 2 ounces or half a stick, easy to remember. That's also 4 tablespoons. So now we have a little structure to the dough. It doesn't look great. It's still like rubbly and kind of grungy, but it's holding together in a mass. So now I'm going to add my 2 ounces of butter, and it's really soft so that it incorporates quickly. You don't want it melted though. If you add melted butter to this, it's just going to get really sloppy and it's going to coat the outside of the dough and not actually incorporate. If it is too cold, it won't incorporate at all. You'll just get chunks of cold butter hanging out. And once I no longer see any butter floating around, I'm going to turn up the speed of the mixer, maybe medium speed on your mixer, and set a timer for 10 minutes. It might take longer, but after 10 minutes you're going to check it, and what you're going to see, hopefully at 10 minutes, could be 15, is that instead of the dough sticking to the sides of the bowl, it will start coming together around the hook. So when I turn this up, it's going to spread out a little, and it's going to be a little sticky. And then after about 10 minutes, what we're looking for is for the dough to be shiny and smooth. And it'll be a little tacky, but it shouldn't be wet. And then it will be perfect. It is looking so good. And this should be a very tender dough. It's telling you now what kind of bun it's going to be. It's so soft and it's so tender. I'm going to get a bowl and some spray, neutral oil spray, and a very handy tool is a bowl scraper. I also spray that with a little oil so it doesn't stick, and I make sure that I get all this gorgeous dough out. Hi there, honey. I'm going to put it in, I'm going to spray the top, but then I flip it over again because it makes me feel good. I get to feel my dough. And it's crucial that I cover this with plastic wrap, and really well, because platinum yeast from Red Star is so good, this thing will rise. So 45, 50 minutes, keep an eye on it. You just want it to double in size. You can also refrigerate it to slow down the rising process. If you're making it in the evening, overnight's perfect. It's ready to bake and form in the morning. It's so beautiful. It's gotten so big and so happy. I'm sorry, buddy. I'm gonna have to punch you down. So the first thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna punch this puppy down, or degassing, as it's also called. So I'm gonna degas a little more. Still have my scale on. So 60-ish grams per bun, 16 buns total. I'm going to use my bench scraper to cut them. You don't need a knife. This is just the best little tool. And I'm going to keep doing this, and rather quickly. I don't want this to warm up too much. I want to be able to start forming sooner rather than later. Now, the next part is actually forming into the rolls. And I take each piece and I almost do a second degassing of it. I use my thumbs to flatten it a bit. If there are really big bubbles in there that I don't get out now, when this starts to rise in its perfect little bun form, it could cause air bubbles to form on the top of the bun. And when that happens, it kind of looks like your bun's gone through puberty when it comes out of the oven. So I degas it again, and then I get it flat, and I start creating this little seam. I'm grabbing these little ends together to almost, looks like a little dumpling. So now I've got my seam on top, but wait, there's more. I'm going to turn this over and turn my hand into a claw. And I'm going to go around and round and round and round with my hand, almost like a cage. And I'm rolling it around. I'm really securing that seam. I'm tightening that bun and creating a perfect little round. I am spacing them quite a few inches apart because these grow. I mean, this stuff is so buoyant and beautiful The yeast is magic. I have honey buns that are perfectly proofed. They are bouncy and happy and doubled in size. And that is something that is so confusing when you are baking. What is double in size? So I thought, hey, I've got 3 stages in my proofing area I wanted to show you so you get a visual. Because this is a tray of honey buns that I just shaped. Just now, still cold. I'd have in the fridge, rolled them. These have been sitting out for about ½ hour. They are not ready. But if you just saw these 2 together, you'd think, that's double in size, I think. I'm not sure. But enter this guy. This is double. This is beautiful and ready to go into the oven. I give a gentle poke and I can still see my fingerprint in there. When I do this, it goes bing, bounces back. This is telling me that it is so ready for the oven. And the great thing about Platinum Yeast by Red Star is that if you overproof, which is really easy to do because you're confused or you forgot you were proofing at all, that it has dough strengtheners. So any other yeast would just collapse in the oven. This one keeps them strong, large and in charge. They'll still be perfect buns. So you've got some time to play. You've got time to play and to make sure that they have actually expanded to the right size. So now, egg wash, which is just 1 egg whisked together with a tablespoon of water. And at this point, when you jiggle them, they go, you also know they're ready. That's my favorite. I'm finishing up all my egg wash. Means they're ready for a 350 Fahrenheit oven. I can't wait to see how they do. Honey buns straight from the oven. They smell as good as they look. Now, if you're one of those people who's unsure about when bread is done, there are a couple tricks. Obviously, golden brown, number 1. Number 2, hot. It's hot, but quickly tap the bottom. If it sounds hollow, usually done. Usually. So there's a 3rd way to ensure that it's completely done. Instant read thermometer, gently probe in the middle of it. If it reads 190 degrees or above, it's done inside. That is a guarantee. But wait, there's more. I have honey bunnies. Aren't they adorable? They're still a little warm, but when they're cool, I'm going to pipe ganache, chocolate ganache, 2 little eyes and an X for a mouth, but you can also use edible writing pens. And this is something so fun for kids to do because they can just go to town on those little faces. So I know exactly what you're gonna do. You're gonna go out and you're gonna get some Platinum Yeast from Red Star. And all your baking will rise to every occasion.